It's my privilege to welcome the participants of this Larimer 101 class to your presentation on the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. I first want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to invest in learning more about your county government and learning about the different elected offices and the departments and the things that we do. I'm Justin Smith. I'm your county sheriff. I've been privileged to be a member of the office since 1991. I've worked my way through the agency over the 30 plus years and was honored to be elected first in 2010, began my first term in 2011 serving as your sheriff, and have had two subsequent terms as sheriff and have had the honor and privilege of serving the office. Again, I want to thank you. The format's a little bit different this time for Larimer 101. Please forgive me. We're going to be moving pretty quick. We normally take a lot more time to cover all the duties of the sheriff's office. So I'm going to try to give you a quick overview, knowing that we're going to come back together a little bit later to answer questions for you. So my intent today is to give you a little understanding behind who your sheriff is, the direction of the office, the responsibilities and duties of the office, and a little bit about the structure that we have here. So rather than do an actual video, we thought a narrated slide presentation is probably going to be the best way to bring this about. So watching the time, I want to go ahead and get moving with what we have for you today. First, I want to introduce you to what the stated mission of the sheriff's office is. And you can see on the slide here, and I'll walk through this as we protect and preserve life, liberty, and property in Larimer County through the delivery of superior public safety services. Hopefully, as you read through that, the wording in there resonates with you, that you've seen that or something very close to that in the past. And if you did, you're correct. That's essentially a pull out of the Declaration of Independence. As we worked with our office to figure out how we best explain our mission and make that known to our employees first so that they know what they're responsible for doing, and to the citizens that we served, I pulled that quote essentially out of the Declaration of Independence, recognizing really the duty of government. And the Declaration, it talks about preserving life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As that was written back in the 1700s, it was interchangeable. The idea of pursuit of happiness was often interpreted as the ability to have your own property. That things didn't belong to a king, they belonged to individuals. So we took that. It gives a pretty direct way to explain. We take care of people and their stuff, and very importantly, we protect their rights and liberties as guaranteed through the Constitution. So, and the expediency of time, I'm just going to move through that and also point out that we also have a vision statement that goes simply one agency, one mission, public safety. And as I walk through a description of the sheriff's office and how broad our duties are, I think it'll be kind of easy to understand why the second half of that really pulls the employees of the sheriff's office together, because we have such divergent responsibilities. Next, I'm just going to walk you over the general statutory duties of the office of sheriff. First, it's a very unique office. It's the last elected law enforcement office in the United States, and in the vast majority of states, it is still an elected office. If you go back in time to the 1800s, it was not unusual to have elected town constables as well, but those became under the power of a city council over time. We've kept that for law enforcement services at the county level as an elected office. But one of the things I point out is a lot of people have a basic vision. They think of law enforcement and the old West sheriff, keeping safety in his county back in the day. And then the jail duties. Those are pretty well known. But what I really want to do is give you a quick overview of how broad our responsibilities are, because if you go to the municipal level, the state level, or the federal level, all of these duties that are in here, if they exist at those levels of government, typically are spread out. They're not under an individual office. Law enforcement and corrections is separated at the others. But if you look at it in Colorado, a sheriff has law enforcement authority throughout their county. Now, we do have some jurisdiction that goes beyond our counties on certain things we're doing in law enforcement, but primarily if there is a violation of criminal law, state law anywhere in the county, that does fall legally under the jurisdiction of the elected county sheriff. Now, with that said, when there's a municipal police department that's established, we defer to them primarily on calls for service, 911 calls, because that entity as a municipality, be it a city or a town, is collecting tax dollars for that purpose. And their law enforcement also handles municipal code, which we don't. So first of all, the sheriff is a law enforcement officer. Secondly, and this wording actually comes from statute that goes back well over 200 years ago, is a discussion of the sheriff being the keeper of the jail. Now, when it comes to jail duties, while we have law enforcement agencies throughout the county in the different cities, at the university, et cetera, we only have one secured lockup in any county, and that's the responsibility of the county sheriff to operate that. So anyone arrested throughout Larimer County by the city of Fort Collins, city of Loveland, Estes Park, CSU, the other communities, State Patrol, et cetera, will actually be booked into the county jail under the operation of the sheriff. Now, the phrase keeper of the jail is not by accident, because statute also very clearly puts the duty and responsibility for funding the jail operation to the Board of County Commissioners. And it talks about their responsibility to build an adequate jail, to provide the monies to feed inmates, to provide the utilities to the jail, et cetera. So the sheriff is the keeper of jail operations. So we have law enforcement, corrections. Now you go on to the next part, and I'll lump two together, officer of the court and court security. Again, very unique, because if you look at county court and district court, which are both under the state, the sheriff is considered to be the officer of the court. Now, we're not judicial branch employees, but our responsibility as officer of the court is simply to carry out the court orders that are there, that anytime a judge makes a ruling, I put it this way, that it's essentially a piece of paper. Unless it's enforced or enforceable, it's a piece of paper from a judge ordering somebody to do something or not do something. So our responsibility at that point is to make sure we carry out those court orders, and those happen in the cities as well. Courthouse security, sheriff's responsible, and the premise behind that is that the courts need to be open to any and every person, and if it's not a safe courtroom, it's not a place that you're going to feel good being. And then the other duties, I'm going to lump the three together, and we'll go over a little bit more in a while. But in Colorado, very unique, the sheriff is statutorily the fire warden for the county. People in Larimer County are very familiar with that, as we've had some very significant wildfires over the last decade, and they've seen the duties and responsibilities of the sheriff in firefighting operations. Again, if you look at the slide, search and rescue, we'll go over that. That covers countywide. And then we've been delegated to handle hazmat in the county, and the sheriff oversees that. It's actually done typically through fire departments. I'm sure you've at some point hopefully seen a map of Larimer County. You've seen it in a very broad way. What I brought to you here, it divides it up into the patrol districts as we look at the county. And again, it's not really pulling out the municipalities. Everywhere there's a city or a town, there's a responsibility of them to do law enforcement. But we've broken the county up into 7 distinct patrol districts. As you're looking at the right side there, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, those are all what we typically refer to as valley area. They go a little ways into the mountains, but the deputies that patrol those areas are really based out of the main office in Fort Collins and are assigned to those districts. They make sense on kind of how we travel and traverse the county. If you look at the districts called Area 6 and Area 7, you'll recognize those as being mountain districts, and you can pretty easily recognize that the Area 6 is really centered out of Estes Park and covers services around there. We work together with the town and the national park up there, but we have deputies assigned. And then the most remote one is Area 7. You look up there and see a vast area, extremely large, and that's actually staffed with a single deputy at a time, and they're equipped to handle a lot more than just regular law enforcement. But that's a quick overview of that. And what I'll point out, you can see the county lines there, and the state line is we have 4 Colorado counties that adjoin us that we work with, Jackson, Grand, Boulder, and Weld. And then on the state line, we actually have Laramie County and Albany counties as well that we work with. So when you look at that, you realize we've got 9 different surrounding counties. We also work with 6 surrounding counties in 2 states, 9 different municipalities that exist. We work with a variety of federal agencies as well. So a lot of responsibility and things to cover there. And just a quick mention of patrol. Unfortunately, time's not going to allow me to go into all these things, but within the patrol division doing law enforcement, just an overview of a lot of the specialty areas and responsibilities we have. From there, as we're talking about law enforcement, we also have criminal investigations division. And there we break that up. The detectives or the investigators that work in there can be assigned to crimes against persons primarily. You see a list of what those types of crimes are, pretty self-explanatory. And then we also break it down into property crimes. And again, pretty self-explanatory. Now those investigators will work back and forth as things require it. We're going to move them around to help out, but those are the 2 major areas we break down how major crimes are investigated. We also are part of we have a crime laboratory. We have one in-house that does a lot of the basic things within our agency as we collect evidence and prepare it for court. But as we get into more sophisticated crime evidence, that actually goes to the Northern Colorado Regional Crime Lab. We're a part of a consortium that are Weld and Larimer County agencies. It's Weld County, City of Greeley, Larimer County, Fort Collins, and Loveland all provide staff out there. CBI provides some assistance, and the 2 district attorneys' offices are a part of that as well. But as you can imagine, as we get evidence, we need to make sure we're processing it properly. So that part's covered in the crime laboratory. There's also a regional Northern Colorado Drug Task Force, which Larimer County for the last few years has taken over the operation of that. You can see the breakdown. Drug investigations are very unique and very different than our traditional investigations. Most of those can go some distance out and work with a lot of different agencies. So you see a variety of agencies assigned to that drug task force, and that's a very active group as well. As I'm mentioning law enforcement, it was in a quick slide before this, but we do have a 911 call center here at the Sheriff's Office. We are one of 5 in the county. There's 5 separate ones: Fort Collins, Loveland, Estes Park, Colorado State University, and Larimer County that all have 911 centers. And so that's a combination of answering calls for citizens that call for help in some form, and secondly, for dispatching resources. Not just law enforcement, we do firefighting, we send medical folks, et cetera. We also assist with some of the state agencies, Boyd Lake, some of the parks that are out there, county parks, we dispatch for them as well. Another second major portion, I mentioned keeper of the jail. There's the jail division, and it's broken down into a few different sections in there. I'm just going to make a quick mention. One is jail operations. That's really the uniformed deputies that are providing security within the jail, and they staff each of the housing areas. They move inmates. They move inmates back and forth to court and handle courthouse duties. So we have that section that's the front line, the uniforms people recognize to keep the jail safe and secure. The next area, I'll just make a brief mention, we refer to as jail logistics. And I'll just comment that when you look at it, we have at any given time between 500 and 600 individuals who are in custody. The courts have said they need to be in jail. But you think about it, that's kind of a small community. And when somebody's taken into custody and being held, we have the responsibility to take care of their daily needs. So really anything that goes on in society, we have to take care of in the jail: medical, food service, laundry, cleaning, programs, educational, making the best use of the time. And then just the staff that runs the different things that go on in the jail. You see in the upper right-hand corner on this slide, it mentions court services because the jail actually runs our courthouse security, as I mentioned before. So that falls into there as well. Next, really important to mention, a couple of years ago, Larimer County, back in July of 2021, or actually prior to that, we completed a phase in 21, but we began a jail improvement project. We recognize that our jail, which originally was opened in 1983, has had 2 additions to it since, was in desperate need of modernizing. Includes about 150 additional beds, but more importantly, It just updates and makes it a modern jail. Inmates have changed a lot since 1983. The needs of inmates that are in there, medical, mental health issues. So partnering with the commissioners, we're able to get it funded. That project, we look to have most of that open this fall for use, and then we have about a year's worth of remodeling of our current building and some of the originals. So we'll continue through that and look forward to some point that the community will see jail improvements that I hope they don't simply look at when they open and think it was a good idea, but they'll look back 20 years down the road and say they were thinking the right things there. So that's a very fast overview of jail operations. Next, I want to make mention of civil process that goes in with the courthouse security and officer of the court. What you're looking at here is it's kind of a sad situation, but when people look to have property restored, as an example, you own a property that somebody's not paying, making payments or not paying their rent. And if there's a formal eviction process, it's the responsibility of the sheriff to carry that out appropriately. And it literally comes to the point sometimes of standing by while movers move that property out that's sometimes just been abandoned so that the property owner can take it. But anything that when the courts, they need somebody subpoenaed, somebody needs notice of a lawsuit, et cetera, that falls under the duties of the sheriff to handle those, make sure that stuff's handled properly through the civil court. So we are that enforcement arm. And that, again, goes throughout the county. That's not just in an unincorporated. Just a quick mention as we talk about those law enforcement responsibilities. One of the important support things that we have is our commitment to support victims of crime. And we have an almost all volunteer-run group. There's a couple of paid staff that oversee really being there for victims, specifically on victims' rights crimes that are in statute, but on a variety of things. We're just there to recognize that there's a lot of things that happen when somebody's victimized by a crime or loses somebody in a tragedy. These folks are there to help out. So a big push on that. I do also want to mention supporting those operations is our records division. Records is responsible for all the work that's done in the office. We have a saying: if it's not put in writing, it's not documented or reported, it essentially didn't happen. So our records division handles all the processing of those, making sure that things get to court for fair trial purposes, making sure everything's in a timely manner presented to the courts, presented to defense counsel as well, so they have the appropriate opportunity to look over what records are there, evidence, et cetera. So very busy in there, and they are the records custodians for our office. Next, just a quick mention, we're getting almost to our 20 minutes, surprisingly, is emergency operations. On the first slide that I went down, I showed you fire, search and rescue, which includes dive rescue for us, and then hazardous material response. And I'm just going to use this slide to cover all of that. We have a facility currently up on North Shields. If you've ever been up by it, we call it the fire cache. It's just up past the Poudre River. It's actually, if you don't know it, it's an old 1950s facility the county had for road and bridge, abandoned years ago. We keep equipment, we keep staff, and we've got a very small staff that manages that, and they oversee, again, firefighting response, search and rescue, and dive rescue, and hazmat calls that are out there. When it comes to firefighting, the sheriff's considered the fire warden of the county, which really just acknowledges that we have wildfires, that those, if they get of any size, are transitioned from a fire district over to the sheriff's office to manage. I got some tremendous staff with great experience in wildland firefighting. It's not that we have a huge army of firefighters at any given time. We'll have a few to several dozen available on call, but what we actually do is we coordinate those fire suppression activities. Same thing, search and rescue, people that get lost in the woods. We use Larimer County Search and Rescue to help find them and get them rescued. And also make mention that Larimer County Dive Rescue helps us as well with that. And then we have Diamond Peaks that handles the duties. We're looking for people lost in the snow or things like that. And again, we coordinate hazmat operations that are out there. Several more things, units of the office that work out there, but this gives you a quick overview. I look forward to seeing you in person and being able to answer your questions, and hopefully we'll have a very great dialogue. Thank you very much for being here. Look forward to seeing you in person. Thank you.